So we've been talking about bits in a couple of these videos, and what I want to address today is what? Bit materials. Okay, I'm going to focus on metals. There are other things besides metals that are used for bits. I have literally no experience with them, and to be absolutely honest with you, though I'm a curious guy, I have no real interest in them. They include things like rubber bits, rubber coated bits, nylon bits, polymer bits. Certain plastics are used. People even make bits of leather or cover metal bits with leather. The problem with most of those things, in my opinion, and the reason why I'm not interested in them is, first, they tend to dry a horse's mouth. We hear about how copper makes a horse salivate, sweet iron can make a horse salivate, nylon, certain of the plastics, leather, as it dries out, all of those things can absolutely dry a horse's mouth as opposed to make them more moist. The second thing that will happen is these things have a short lifespan. That in itself is economically kind of unfeasible. But if you're really dedicated to your horse and you're willing to spend the time, fine. But then be very careful, because as these things go through their life cycle, they change. And nylon bits, for example, are known to get sharp points where maybe a horse is bitten into them. That can cause abrasion, make the horse sore in the corners of the mouth, things like that. So I am not particularly inclined to become involved with those materials myself. If they work for you, terrific, go for it. But I'm not going to address them here because I don't have the experience. And again, I'm not that impressed with them, and I think it's a better alternative to what we've been using for a long, long time, which are metals. Now, we have some new sort of exotic metals out there, which I also haven't had experience with. There's a metal alloy called Oregan that a fellow named Herman Springer, a fellow Herman, has apparently patented or is in the process of patenting. What it is a partial copper alloy that lets you incorporate copper into your bit while maintaining hardness. And there's some other things they say are good about it. I don't have experience with it. I don't feel a compelling need to use it, although I've heard good things about it. And there are a couple of other new sort of, I'll call them space age alloys that are out there that people are experimenting with, which I would say is intriguing. I'm not intrigued enough to go there, but I'd like to learn more about it. I'm going to talk about the more traditional metals that we typically use. And the first and simplest of these to me is stainless steel. This is not a particularly good bit, but it's old. My dad got this bit, and while I say this is not a particularly advanced or effective bit, my dad probably bought this bit back in the early 60s. So it's probably, 60 years old. And at that time, when you saw the garbage we were putting in horses' mouths, nickel-plated, flaking off pot metal pieces of crap, this was really something. And the fact that it was stainless, you went and spent the money on a stainless bit. Well, my dad was a surgeon, and he had a lot of experience with stainless, and he figured if it was good enough to use in and around the human body, should be durable, it's inert, it's unobjectionable, and it doesn't rust. Stainless steel is actually an alloy. It's not pure steel. It has a couple of other elements in it, sometimes some nickel. Nickel gets a bad rap and can cause allergies. To the extent it's used in stainless steel, I think it's usually pretty inert. Or the other thing that'll be in most stainless steel, I believe, is chrome. So it's not pure tool grade steel. It has that non-corrosive element added to it. Makes it real hard, makes it real durable. My dad said to me, he said, I'll be dead and gone and you'll be dead and gone, and this bit'll still live on. He said, this bit'll last at least 200 years. Well, I'd like nothing better than to hang around for the rest of those 200 years, but I probably won't. But I suspect this bit will be there, and it'll look pretty much like it does now. It hasn't been cleaned up, but it stays presentable. I rarely use it because it isn't the most effective bit. But to stay with the medical picture, stainless steel is sort of the Hippocratic bit material. You know, the doctors say, first do no harm. This may not do you as much good as some things, but it will do you no harm. The negatives to stainless steel, it has virtually no taste. So horses like a little flavor in their bits, frankly. This is totally neutral. The second thing is it does absolutely nothing to promote salivation. But if you've got a horse that, you know, is happy enough to carry this and to have a nice moist mouth, a fully stainless bit is a good, durable alternative that will do you no harm and do your horse no harm. So another option, and this is a favorite of mine, is what's known as sweet iron. It's a mild steel. It's a tool grade steel, but it will rust. But it has quite a bit of carbon in it, and as a result of that, it doesn't form the big shaggy rust that you'd see, say, on an old piece of chain. Instead, it just gets kind of a nice patina on it. And particularly when you're using it, it just maintains a nice, even kind of a burnished look. It is structurally strong, so you can use it in the structural part of the bit, you know, in the shanks, in the purchase, in the mouthpiece, and it's strong, it's good. It'll last a long, long time. It has a nice flavor. I haven't used this bit in a while. I will tell you, it does have kind of a nice sweet taste. I've always felt like copper, which is also incorporated in this bit, was sort of overrated. Because, see, the copper tasters in this bit are inlaid there. And they're there to help the horse salivate a little more. Now, if you go to the copper and you put your tongue on it, it has a very different taste. It's like you threw a penny in your mouth. Now, for all I know, horses would love to walk around eating pennies. But for me, I like to taste the sweet iron better. If you had to bridle me up and ride me somewhere, put a sweet iron bit in my mouth, I'm fine. However, the consensus is, and I don't disagree with this, that copper in the sweet iron is a good thing to add some flavor and to also create salivation. Don't like the taste that much. So the logical question is, okay, so you've got this structural components are made out of sweet iron, and then there's some copper inlaid in this. Why not just use copper? And in fact, that is done. And though this isn't very shined up, if you were to look closely, the entire mouthpiece of this bit is copper. Now, here's the downside to copper in its current state of the art, let's say, or traditional state of the art, is it's not as durable. It will tend to wear, it will tend to deform a bit. And that's where this new material that they're coming up with, that is basically a copper alloy, but it's harder, is kind of intriguing. To me, this is overkill. This is more than you need in the way of copper. Doesn't do any harm, but it's relatively expensive. It's not as structurally strong. I wouldn't go out of my way to buy a full copper mouthpiece. This is an old bit too. I bought this. This is the first bit I bought myself. And you know what? It's okay. If you look at the way this is made, I'm going to go off on a little tangent. There is no way this bit can pinch. It's in a sleeve. The mouthpiece wraps around the sleeve. It's an unusual design, and it has never pinched a horse. It's a nice little bit. Don't use it as much as I used to, but that's not because this is copper. The copper's fine. So you've got stainless, you've got sweet iron with a little bit of copper or not. There's plenty of bits that are sweet iron with no copper. You've got stainless, which has, that is stainless, but it needs to be sort of buffed up a little bit, and copper as a combination. Now here's another combination that I don't like. And some people love these. This is a bit which is partially made of another metallic material, and anybody who's been around it all will say, yeah, it's aluminum. That's exactly what it is. If you ever put aluminum roofing nails in your mouth, they don't taste real good. You used to see bits made in their entirety out of aluminum. The doggone stuff will fracture. It's got no weight to it. Doesn't taste good. Don't buy a bit with an aluminum mouthpiece. Now, if you had a horse that, for whatever reason, favored an extremely light bit, this bit is really, really light. I found that I didn't like that. I found that it was a little hypermobile, that if a horse had an active mouth, they could pitch this all around. That if a horse happened to throw their head, this just compounded the situation because it's got so much movement to it. But it's a well-made bit, no complaints about it. It just isn't my choice, hasn't been on a bridle for a long time, which ironically is a shame because I really like the mouthpiece here, which again is sweet iron. And if you look, you can see those tasters. I'm not quite sure where this bit has been lately, so I'm not going to taste this one. And I bet it'll taste about like the other one. If somebody really wants to taste this, we can make arrangements. So that is the aluminum component. Now here is a material you'll rarely see anymore, for good reason, frankly. This is a bit that is pure nickel. And nickel is a very durable metal in that it doesn't really corrode badly. But it's not that strong. It does deform. It can even get kind of bitten to pieces, abraded to pieces. But this bit is older than I am, and I don't want to talk about that. And it's still in good shape. The big rap on nickel, and it's proven. I resisted this idea for ages. I thought it was just slander. Horses can be allergic to it, and they can get kind of a rash and get sensitive to it. So there's no necessity to use a nickel bit when we've got stainless steel that does the same thing, and you have none of the allergic risk of it. I will tell you, this bit, for whatever reason, worked very well for me. And I probably used it to start a couple hundred colts. You know, it's an egg butt, it's got some weight, it's got that Dr. Bristol mouthpiece, you know, the third piece. And I got along with it very, very well. And I was saying to myself, they don't get an allergy from this. I used it on all those horses, they did fine. Then I realized most of those were 60 and 90-day colts I was starting. And they really didn't get exposed to it. The nickel allergy often comes on over an extended time. So maybe if I had used this on a personal horse, say, or on a long-term horse for a year or two, I might have had that problem. Wouldn't stop me from using it, but I don't really need it. It just hangs around for nostalgia's sake. So there we have the nickel. And the other metal that you see, rarely do you see it structurally, although some German silver is used structurally, but is silver. And this is a bit by a maker named Herm Gailey. Bought several of his bits, like them a lot. But it is sweet iron overlaid with sterling. And I really like the look of it. More so than the look of it, this bit has very quickly made it into my top 10 list. I like it a lot. It's a good design. It's a great mouthpiece, a little spoon arrangement there. It's got a tapered mouthpiece. It's soft over the bars, but it's clean and not real big up in here. Like it a lot. Swept back shanks. Very forgiving bit. And seems to be, for whatever reason, a bit that you can use to pick a horse's shoulders up. And real good laterally. Very good laterally, because it's not that long a shank, and it's got a lot of mobility in it. This isn't about function, but I can't help but gossip a little bit. So that's the one use of silver. There are some bits that are structurally made of German silver, and I'm sure that's fine. I don't have any real experience with them. Don't see a real need for that when you have something as good as sweet iron, which is the mouthpiece material here. This bit, interesting. I don't believe it has any copper in it at all. And I'm not losing any sleep over that. And I've used this on a bunch of horses, and none of them has said to me, hey boss, I got the dry mouth. So could it happen? Maybe, but I like it a lot. So what else do we have in terms of materials? Well, we're getting down to it. So here are two materials to avoid. The first I've already talked enough about is aluminum in structural components and mouthpieces. Do not like it. The other thing about aluminum is the damn stuff will fracture. And depending on what you're riding, that can be either annoying or life-threatening. So I don't like structural aluminum in bits. It's okay on a shank, although I'm sure if it's prone to fracture, which has never happened to me, that would be more of a risk. The other bits to stay away from, and I do not have one. I threw out the ones that were around. I wish I'd kept one for conversation's sake. Are bits that are basically cast pot metal. I don't know what pot metal is. It's maybe like pot roast for metal. It's sort of mystery metal. It's a casting. It has bubbles in it. It's usually the sign of a cheap manufactured bit that they've kind of put lipstick on by covering it in nickel, which then corrodes off and it flakes off in your horse's mouth. It's mildly toxic or allergy causing. Don't get a nickel plated bit, especially if what's underneath it is that pot metal. You really want to see what that's like. Just take one, especially on a cold day, whack it with a hammer. It'll break off just like a dry stick. So stay away from that stuff. You don't see them as much. People have smartened up, manufacturers have smartened up, and really one of the more gratifying things over my lifetime is the quality of bits you can buy out there has gone way up. Used to be a real challenge to find a nice bit. Now it's more a matter of making it fit your pocketbook and deciding which one of the whole smorgasbord of bits out there is going to suit you the best. One of the pieces of the puzzle that's on the menu are the different types of metals, and we've touched on, I think, all of the ones I could think of. If there's another metal out there you know of, shoot us a comment. One thing I would like to say, and I think it came through pretty clearly, if I had to pick a single metal, if the menu only included one choice, what's the metal? I would choose sweet iron, tool steel, whatever you want to call it. That's the most versatile for me. It may not be as showy because this bit looks handcrafted, which it is. This is a Greg Darnell. And Greg Darnell is still making bits. Been around forever. Builds a bit that you can really use. And he was big into using straight up sweet iron, you know, back in the 80s. And this bit I bought back in the 80s. It is just fine. And the sweet iron is good with it. It has a little copper in it, as I said, but if it didn't, wouldn't lose any sleep. So if I had to pick, if you said, well, the menu only includes one meat or one metal, the meat I would pick would be sweet iron. So hope that gave you some food for thought. Hope I got it right. and I hope it's helpful to you. Till next time.